Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Masks Off. This is Kim,
And Tia?
and we are here to talk about letting go of what people think. What does it mean to be authentic? And so, like we do in all of our episodes, we start with a quote. So, I'm going to start off with often people attempt to live their lives backwards. They try to have more things or more money in order to do more of what they want so that they'll be happier. The way it actually works is the reverse. You must first be who you really are, then do what you really need to do in order to have what you want. Margaret Young.
Yeah, that's a big one, especially, we've talked about it a little bit already, the whole cultural conditioning. You go to school, go to college, not everyone, but that's kind of what your counselors in school really pressure, right? And then you get a good
Yes.
job and then this, and then you'll be happy. But
Yes.
it's that striving. So you don't know who you are because you're just thinking about the next thing. Okay, so I got my degree. Now I have to get the good job. Now I have to get the house. Now I have to have this, the money, the da da da. And we lose track. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you, but I was just following the check boxes along, not really paying attention to what I wanted. Really, I mean, little things, but not in the grand scheme. I didn't know who I was, really. I mean, inside I knew who I was, but I hadn't connected to that. So I just think that quote is so true because once you
Yeah.
start to do the work, you realize, wow, if only I had done it the other way around. I mean, it took me being a civil engineer, environmental engineer, realizing that really wasn't what I wanted to do.
Mm.
Imagine if I knew who I was. I mean, and I'm not discounting my journey and my understanding and process of how it was, but if we could switch it, culturally switch it, take that pressure off, and put the more on who are you? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What lights you up? Imagine what it would be like. It'd be so different.
And now during coronavirus, it's a perfect time
Mm-hmm.
to reinvent the educational system. Like, honestly, do we really have to put kids back in school?
It'll be
I mean,
interesting.
right? It's a
Yeah.
perfect opportunity. Will we as a society take advantage of this opportunity? Probably not. I think schools are going to try to open back up in the fall.
Yeah.
I mean, just even from the standpoint of having the kids, telling kids every 45 minutes once they hit middle school and high school, every 45 minutes, where you're going to be, what you're going to learn. And they're there for 35 hours plus a week,
Right. It's a
just
lot.
being conditioned.
Right. So my daughters went to Montessori school through seventh grade,
Mm,
and it's not like that.
yeah. Tell
So
us what it's like.
I mean, I didn't go to Montessori, so I can tell you what it was like as a parent. I mean, not that there weren't blips in the road,
Mm,
but they were able to, if they were working on a subject that they chose, they still had to learn math and they still had to learn, so it wasn't this loosey goosey. There was very much a structure around it, but it
right.
was a structure with choice. And so if my daughter was doing a project on fennec foxes, that was one of my daughters did, and so it brings in science, it brings in history, it brings in all these things, global climate change, whatever it was that she was
Mm,
researching. But so she would dive into it, and it wasn't like, ding, the bell rings, oh, it's 45 minutes, you got to stop researching fennec foxes. She
right.
could keep going. So the desire to learn and be curious was encouraged. And then they had going out. So as they got older, I think it was started in first grade, I believe. Part of doing a research project was creating a going out. So they had to decide where they were going to go out to talk to someone outside of the classroom and learn from someone who's out there. I drove 4 or 5 kids once to the Milwaukee Zoo, an hour and a half away. And the kids had to contact the zookeeper and schedule a meeting with the zookeeper in this area. They had to figure out what are the directions. So I'm driving and they had to tell me, okay, you're going to be turning right. I mean, age appropriate, of course, I'm like, okay, I don't think they're going to say, do I, but there were times we went the wrong way. So it was
cool.
all these different talking on the phone. I mean, one of my daughters did it was around a history. So they did have, certain areas they had to go into. And I think this was something to do with history. I don't remember exactly, but she researched the FBI and I can't remember specifically what it was about. And she couldn't find she couldn't get contact information to talk to an FBI officer at all. She was trying and it was frustrating. So this was 7th grade. And so in the upper level. And she really had to work hard. And she found some blog on the internet with some FBI officer's email address. And so she emailed him and they emailed back or they called the school. I can't remember exactly the thing. But basically they vetted the school to make sure that this was legit. And I was there to pick up from school. There was with a couple of families, we carpooled. And all of a sudden, Laura from the office comes running out. Sam, the FBI is on the phone for you. And it was like, what? So she went in and talked and she got back in the car and she's like, Mom, he wanted to know where I got his email address because it's not supposed to be on the web anywhere. And
wow.
so she said it was on this post or blog or whatever. I don't know if she at the time remembered, but he had to go find it and take it down. So what amazing learning experiences of, here is this man who contacted you explaining, I don't think he explained, maybe he did to her, but the office, we had to vet you, but it's the going out, it's that experiencing versus just reading a book and regurgitating facts and not having that bell, like school was over. She was getting in the car. And the office staff came out and not, hey, can you call tomorrow or I'll have her call you. School is over. It was like, school's not over. Learning never ends.
Learning never ends. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's lots of stories, but I'm grateful they had that experience. And it was a switch to go to the bell dings and we go to another classroom with another teacher because they had the same teachers every day.
Right. I bet that was a tough transition.
They did okay. They did okay. Yeah. There were, and having grades and all of that was tests. It's different, but.
Well, that's just it. Before I stayed home with my kids, I was a school teacher in a public high school, and we had curriculum that we had to follow. There were state, mandates. There was all this bureaucracy.
Right.
That we had to abide by, and it limited what we could, in some ways, it limited what we could teach. I ended up eventually being with the at-risk students, so I was able to have a little bit more flexibility. But at the end of the day, they still had to pass all the Regents exams, so I still had to teach to the test. I don't know, and we have Regents exams in the state of New York. But going back to what you were saying, it's amazing that your girls had that experience to explore and to really learn in a different way. And I would think even to add on, if there were a way to really revamp education at this point to help tie into this authenticity, is to be able to ask the students as they're learning, how does this resonate with you? How does this feel? Does this feel authentic, this learning, or does any of it? Students are never asked. I never asked my students, like, what do you think about this? They would often be authentic in their complaining. Like when I would say, take out your book, take out this, and we're doing this, like, really?
Yeah.
So their complaining was their way of voicing to me that this learning didn't resonate. Even still, chairs, the desks. I mean, honestly, it's like, can you imagine? We did it, but how awful it is to have students sit in a hard metal chair desk for 7 hours a day.
Right. I remember. Oops, sorry.
That's okay. And I was going to say, and then lunch is 20 minutes. Shovel your food in, talk about developing eating disorders when you have to eat so
Mm-hmm.
fast.
Disconnection from your body right there. You don't even know
Oh,
if you're hungry. You may not be hungry, but that's your only opportunity to
yeah,
eat. It's the same with the bathroom. I mean, here in
exactly.
high school, you have to ask permission to go to the
To go to the
bathroom. That's
bathroom.
just, it doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense. And it's that continued disconnection from self,
right, right.
you know? It's it's interesting because, you've lived it on that side, not just
I
as a
did.
going to school and being a parent of kids in school, but as a teacher. And so it's a whole different, I sometimes can't wrap my brain around what it must be like and how stifling for the teachers
Yeah,
it
it's
can
very
be.
stifling.
And just the sitting in classroom day in and day out. I remember reading, I don't know I can't recall who wrote it, but it was a principal who decided to pretend that they were a student for a day. I can't remember if it was middle school or high school.
Oh,
And after the first day, she's like, how do we expect them to sit still that long? How do we expect
yeah,
them to focus for that long extended period of time? She said, by the fourth hour, I was done. And when you think
yeah,
about like typical jobs, in an office, back when I worked in an office with people, it's like
yeah,
you would be working and then someone would walk by your office, or the water cooler chat. You'd have breaks throughout the day.
yes.
I mean, that was just built into the process because you need to refresh, you need to restart. The kids, they don't get that opportunity except walking in the classroom and walking from class to class. It's not the same
Right.
thing.
And in the high school that my kids went to is such a big high school. It was really spread out. They literally have like 4.5, maybe 5 minutes to get from one
Mm-hmm.
class to another. And
Right.
I swear, every time I would go to parent night and have to just follow their schedule, I was exhausted by the end of the night for the amount of walking that I had to do and how fast, how
Mm-hmm.
quickly I had to get from one end to the other end. So, you
Right.
know, that whole idea of catching up with friends and just taking a break, taking a mental break,
Right.
it's not normal and it's not natural. And it really does cultivate and
Mm-hmm.
condition our young kids to disconnect and disassociate from what are natural rhythms in their minds and
Right.
bodies.
So how can you be authentic if you're in an inauthentic system? And I mean, I have no answers. I don't know. And then understanding too that every kid, every person learns differently.
Yes.
What works I mean, for example, just in the Montessori school, it didn't work for every kid. It's not
Right.
it's a great, beautiful, education opportunity, but it's not for every person. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So to figure out how to move forward with the schools, I mean, I don't have answers. I
And
don't even pretend to.
we do this with our kids for 18 years.
Yeah,
That's a long, I mean, I've never done the math, but if you think about
it's a
how
lot.
many minutes or hours that they're
Right.
being conditioned that way, that,
Mhm.
by the time they are 18 and they have been conditioned to do this, they're probably very cut off from, and how do you then redirect
Right.
to say, like, what is authentic to you? How does this feel? And I keep bringing up in different episodes, which I really hope that it continues to grow within the schools. But I think at a younger age, they are starting to implement some
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence. In fact, there's even a school in Baltimore, Washington, a school district where it was actually where I first learned about Dr. Shafali,
Oh,
because I
really?
went to, this was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I went to a conference in New York City. It was through the Omega Institute,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on mindfulness in schools, because at the time I was thinking, if I wanted to go back and teach, maybe I would want to do something with mindfulness.
Nice.
And while I was there, Dr. Shafali was the keynote speaker. Side note, while I was there, there was another group, 3 guys from the Holistic Life Foundation. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So
Gonna
there's
write
these
it down.
three, write it down. Look them up. They're amazing. So these 3 guys from the Holistic Life Foundation, they grew up in Baltimore, and they wanted to I think they were definitely all into meditation. They were into yoga, and they just wanted to somehow give back to the community. I don't remember all the details on their backstory, but they started working with this school district in the inner city of Baltimore. And what they did, I think it may have been K through 12, but they would have kids go, first of all, they had a meditation room. And whenever there was a fight or people, fights, I guess, they would break up the fight, but have them go to the meditation room. And they would just teach them how to go inward. Like, this is what we're talking about, how to go inward. What are you feeling? What's going on? Learning how to express their feelings, their emotions, and meditating. And it's made such a difference in that school district. The number of fights have gone way down. The scores on their tests have gone up. There's so much more, I guess, like peace and happiness amongst the students. They're getting along better. Just everything has just improved so much from, and my point in bringing up the story is the emotional intelligence is, starting to teach that, so that we start to teach kids at a younger age how to go inward and connect to what are you feeling.
Right. Our district here, keep in mind my kids, obviously they didn't go to the district till 8th grade. And this wasn't in play for them because they were starting it, but they actually have implemented emotional intelligence into their school district. And I believe, no, I could be wrong. So I'm going to share what I think I know, or what I know to what I understand is they started first in kindergarten, and then then it expanded. So then the kindergartners continued. So it was kindergarten and first, so they just, that first set of children have had emotional learning through the grades. And I think they're now in 6th grade, I believe.
Wow.
Maybe. And so they started in pre-K now, so 4K. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious now that I believe they are in middle school now, how that's going to look and translate into high school too. And there's only so much the district can do it. They still have to do what you were talking about. They still have to, the testing and meet all the state standards and all of that. But I know they are bringing some of it in. I don't know to the extent in but I know particularly in those younger grades, they have like pictures of, what face are you, or something fox or cricket. I don't know that, but there is a actual emotional intelligence curriculum that I think several districts around the country are using. And I know other districts in the area are implementing other things as well. So it's starting.
It's starting, and it's so important you have to start somewhere.
Right. And you're not going to get it right.
What we're talking about is what that is going inward. We're just so not taught how to go in,
right,
and find out what am I feeling? What is going on for me? What do I think? Right. What do I feel? What do I value? Right. Yeah. So going back to Brene Brown, in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she talks about authenticity is a daily practice of letting go of who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we are. And then she goes on to say that choosing authenticity means this: 3 things. 1 is to cultivate the courage to be imperfect, to set boundaries, and to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Okay, can we just do that one first?
Yeah.
First of all.
I'm like, well, that's a whole episode.
I know.
I mean, I know we've touched on some of it already.
Yes. Yes.
And it'll continue. I mean, these themes are just going to continue to show up
in
the conversations because it's all overlaps. But yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just read the other 2 quickly, and then we can choose if we want to talk about one. The second one is exercising the compassion that comes from knowing that we are all made of strength and struggle. She uses the word struggle instead of weakness, and I love that.
Yeah.
And then the third one, so choosing authenticity means nurturing the connection and sense of belonging that can only happen when we believe that we are enough.
The fitting in
Oh,
versus belonging, right?
oh gosh.
Can you imagine
Yes.
having that ability growing up? I mean,
Oh
and
my
I
goodness.
understand maybe, I mean, actually, I'm going to correct myself. We talk about developmental, like it's normal that, you know, you're trying to figure out who you are in adolescence and
Mhm.
fitting in. Yes. And what if you kind of have a better idea of who you are? So would fitting in look different? Would fitting in be more like belonging in adolescence? Because if they're taught to return to themselves,
Completely.
so you still have that appropriate, you know, the developmental autonomy, figuring out who I am and how do I fit in it, but who am I and how do I belong? It would be interesting to see if what it would
Mm.
look like in adolescence, in middle
My
school.
imagining is, and maybe this is, me living in the world of unicorns and rainbows, because I can do that with my magic wand. Let me make everybody better. So let me go,
Fixing.
my pixie dust, fixing. Let me go into my world of unicorns for a minute. But what you're saying is, so think about that. If I was taught, or we were taught at an early age, how to go inward and what it truly means to belong rather than fitting in, can you imagine there would be, I feel, so much less drugs and alcohol. I mean, there still may be
Yeah,
some experimenting, but
sure.
I don't know if there would be as much, because how much of starting with drinking or drugs is because of the peer pressure,
Mhm.
right? And wanting,
Or them trying to get the pain away,
exactly,
that disconnection away.
right. So it would take away both of those. Like if the peer pressure came, but I was taught from a young age how to go inward, and I was more connected to my belonging, and I wanted to just belong rather than to fit in. One, I'm going to maybe be able to, in that first one, set boundaries, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with being imperfect, because I was conditioned to grow
Right.
up that way. Right. So I'm okay being imperfect. I can say
Mm-hmm.
no. It's okay to set a boundary. I don't have to fit in with you. I belong because
Right.
I belong to the universe, and I'm tapped into that. I'm tapped into who I truly am, because we
Mm-hmm.
have that. We talked about that before. You have that when you're a child,
Right.
right? We have that sense of freedom and just being who we are. We lose it as time goes on because of the shaming that takes
Mm-hmm.
place,
Judgments and
and the
right.
judgments.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then if I'm connected, truly connected to who I am, you're right. I wouldn't need to use drugs, alcohol, or food to numb that pain, because the pain comes from the source of being disconnected from my true self.
And even when those uncomfortable feelings come up, because they come up even when we're connected,
Yes.
we know they're just a feeling and it's okay. It's
Yes.
not that something's wrong with us or that I need to be happier. No, I can just feel crappy right now and I'm just going to sit with it. No, no, it's gone.
Because
Versus it
through
becomes part
emotional,
of who we are.
yes, and through emotional intelligence, you learn
Right.
how to sit with those feelings. You learn how to
Exactly.
name it. You
Right.
name what you're feeling. Through the teachings or meditation, you realize it's just a thought. And you
Mm.
learn that your thoughts are just thoughts. They're not who you are.
Yep.
And you learn how to ride it.
Right.
It's a skill set, is it not? And
Oh,
it's something that needs to be taught, that we were
right.
never taught.
And as parents, we weren't taught it. So it's hard for
No,
us to teach it until we learn it ourselves
exactly.
and practice it ourselves.
And practice it. And
Because
this is
we,
what you and I have been doing in our work and the path that we've been on,
right.
which is what inspires these conversations, this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and this,
Exactly.
YouTube.
Do you think we need to explain a little more for people who aren't familiar with Brené's work, what fitting in is versus what belonging
Yes,
is? Just in
yes,
case you aren't, because it can sound kind of similar.
yes, it does. And it can feel
Yeah.
similar. Yes.
Yeah.
How
So,
should we describe the difference?
um, well, I'll take a stab at it. So
Okay.
I would say fitting in is more, you mold yourself. Do you notice that you when you're around a certain set of people, you kind of may silence parts of you. You may become more outgoing or more this or that to fit in. You want to it's an artificial fitting in. You're disconnecting from your authenticity. And for me, belonging is I can be who I am and say what I feel I need to say. I can be vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable when you're fitting in.
Right.
You can't share because you're worried of judgment. And so, I'm just going to be quiet because I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Where when with belonging, you choose to speak up or you choose to say your truth, and you're okay if you ruffle feathers, or you may say, you know what, I'm okay. I can sit with what's showing up for me. I don't need to share it right now. So you're choosing to check in with yourself and bring your true self forward more. I guess that's kind of how I would say it. It was a little clumsy, but
Yeah, no. And you know what? So I'll tie in an example that just
okay.
happened for you and I.
Oh yeah, there we
Right?
go. Perfect.
I'll tie in the example where if I chose fit, because it's been such a pattern for me my whole life to not speak up and not use my voice for fear of being rejected, because that's
Mm-hmm.
one of our core fears that's wired into us when we
Right.
come into this world, right? We don't want to be rejected. It goes back to the primitive brain, just like the animals. If you get separated from the herd,
Yep.
you're going to likely not survive if you're
Mm-hmm.
off by yourself. So that's real and hardwired. So for me, not using my voice has been a pattern because I felt and believed, it was a belief system that if I speak up and I use my voice and I say something that might upset the other,
Right.
the other's going to walk away from me or leave me, abandon me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or
Tia and
make you
I,
feel bad and there's a
or
conflict and then it gets, I have to deal with the conflict.
yes,
A real big
yes,
conflict that
a
you
real
can
big,
create in your head.
yes, exactly. So, so last weekend, Tia and I had a situation or an example of this where a situation came up with our podcast, and I just wanted to speak up and voice my side of things. And I told her, I said, okay, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm going to be really vulnerable here. This is really hard. This is not what I do. But, I want to be authentic because
Yep.
I want to walk the walk instead of talk the talk. So, and that,
Yep.
Tia was great. She was amazing. She's like, okay, go ahead. And so I just really spoke my truth, or just, spoke up and said how I felt about a certain thing. And with YouTube, and she was great about it. But I was even telling her how I could feel in my throat,
Mm-hmm.
and in my chest, the energy, because it's so difficult. So
Yeah.
I chose to be authentic, but if I didn't speak up,
Mm-hmm.
then that would be me fitting in. I would
Right.
silence my voice. I would just go along with whatever, even though it didn't feel right for me in my gut. I would just be quiet, and I would just fit in to make sure that Tia or whoever the other person was stayed happy with me.
Right. Right. And I mean, it was fantastic, right?
It was so good.
It was just, we're just going to have a conversation and share what's
Yeah.
showing up. And I think, I just lost my train of thought, but you said something, I lost it. Maybe it'll come back. But that inauthentic piece of your old pattern
Yeah.
of being afraid to speak up, then it just chips away, right? And then it would have
Yes.
chipped away at our relationship.
Yes, it does. Then resentment starts to build.
Right.
Exactly.
And then what good does that do? Because then how many of you listening have been in friendships where you haven't spoken up? And then it's over time, it's like, I have to talk to that person again. But it's because you've already you co-created this challenge because you were more worried about, I don't want to upset somebody. I'd rather upset myself in the process.
Yeah.
Than
And
worry
then,
about it. And we can create a conflict that may not even happen.
I know.
In our head.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, I'll say two things about that. Sometimes there are people that are unsafe. There are
Correct.
times when you're going to speak up, you're going to use your voice, you're going to say something, and the response from the other person is not going to be pleasant. And this
Right.
is where it truly is a journey, and it is a process of, cultivating self-worth, self-esteem, enough self-love and inner strength over
Mm-hmm.
time to be able to have the bandwidth to say, okay, I'm going to say what I need to say for me and be true
Yes.
to my authentic self, even though the other person may be angry or upset, and it
Yeah.
may often happen. So
Yep.
that can happen too.
Glad you brought that up. Yes, because
Yeah.
it
And
can happen.
had you responded or reacted with anger or anything negative, then I would have to just, after the conversation, go back and process that and just really tune in with myself and, you know, take care of myself. Like,
Right.
feel those feelings, go inward. Like, I checked in with myself. I know what I said it in a, caring way. I was, diplomatic about it. I wasn't being mean or nasty. And it was truth for me. It
Right.
was truth. So it needed to be said.
Right. And that's
Here's
the boundary piece,
that's the
right? And
boundary.
that
Yes.
that doesn't always mean that people are going to be okay with what you say.
No. And we are going to
That's
do a
okay.
full episode on boundaries because
Yes.
that's important. It's a big one.
Oh yeah.
But I'll say also too that the danger side for me in not using my voice and not
Mm-hmm.
speaking up when I am not true to myself, right? That's why that whole cliche or quote, "To thy own self be true," is
Mm-hmm.
really so important. But when I'm not true to myself and I betray myself to please the other, what
Mm-hmm.
often can show up for me is like, then I feel I have separated from myself.
Yeah.
I've disconnected, and something just feels bad inside of me. It's an
Yeah.
energy. And
Mm-hmm.
often what I'll want to do then to get rid of that feeling is I go eat.
Yeah.
You stuff it down some way, whether it's, have a drink, have a smoke, have something to eat.
Yeah.
It's just because that pain is coming up. There's a struggle inside of me of saying, you just
Right.
betrayed me, self. You just
Exactly.
saved the other person's feelings at
Mm-hmm.
the expense of your own,
Right.
at the expense of using your own voice. And I think that's a big part of Brené's work, which is
Mm-hmm.
why she is so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's again goes way back to the beginning of the conversation. It's that we're striving for that outside stuff rather
Right.
than our authenticity, and that includes your relationships. It's not just the money and the this and the
Right.
status. It's because that comes in with friendships, relationships. If you're sacrificing yourself for those,
Yeah.
it's not they can't sustain forever, because I shouldn't say that, because some people can do that until the day they die.
And many do.
Yeah, exactly.
Many do.
So,
And it's sad.
mm-hmm. And so noticing, how is that showing up in your life? What are you
Yeah.
striving for, and how are you not being authentic? And I hear a lot from people, how do I find my authentic self?
Yeah.
Well, it's a journey. It's not like, I'm sure there's people who they can do it very quickly, because there's always different
Yeah.
ways. But for me personally, I'm still discovering that.
I know. It's a process.
It's a
It's
process, and it's an active process. It's not a passive process. It's literally, okay, like you said, okay, what that feeling's coming up, what's showing up, what am I thinking, what am I believing? That's how we start. Just this, what am I feeling, what am I thinking, what am I believing? You can
yeah.
ask yourself those 3 questions, and if you journal that, or you just sit with it, things will come up for you if you're actually just sit with it and be
Yeah.
curious. That's how you start to find your authentic self, because you were born with it. It's not gone.
Right. Right. It's not something you have to find on the outside.
No, it's
there
there.
in you. You have moved away from it. So as
Right.
Tara Brach says, she's another wisdom
Mm-hmm.
teacher. She says it's a homecoming. It's
Right.
just coming back to yourself
Mm-hmm.
is what it's about.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
like for me, when I reflect back to the times I've shared before, when I was, 6 or 7 years old, and I can just remember playing in the snow or literally playing in the mud or just swimming in a lake. I just remember, that's when I remember just being myself.
Yeah.
just being free and, truly not caring about other people. I felt so connected to nature, which is
Yeah.
who we all are. We are
Right.
nature, right?
Right.
The energy that's in the ocean, that's in the sky, that's in the trees is the same energy that's in us.
Right.
So it's natural that we would feel so connected to nature, or that I felt so connected to nature. And that's when I felt the most free. Right? Playing in the snow, being in the mud, swimming. That's when I was most free. But then as I got older and older and in school and around other kids and like, okay, then it was the comparison. That's the
Right.
part that really kills the authenticity.
And that's the fitting in.
That's the fitting in, right? So I remember we would play, kickball on the playground. Was I fast enough? Like I remember like 7 or 8 I better kick this kickball really far so I get picked, because how often, oh my God, do you remember the feeling in gym class when they would pick 2 kids to be the captains
and
to pick the teams?
Oh.
And I didn't want to be the last one. So I wanted to make sure I was athletic, that I was fast, that I was good.
Right.
That's fitting. That creates fitting in. Like, I want to be
Pick me.
I want to be in the crowd.
Am I good enough?
Yes.
Tell me I'm good enough on the outside.
Yes. I remember I was shared in one episode how I had so many different groups of friends that I could hang out with, because I was so good at camouflaging myself. And camouflaging is just another way of saying fit in. I knew how to just fit in. I knew I could feel the vibe or read what they were like, and then I would just play the part.
Wow.
Play the role to fit in.
Yeah. And which is different than being authentic and being able to connect with varying people.
Yes.
And different groups.
Yes.
And you're talking about 2 different things.
That's the difference between, for listeners, that's the difference between fitting in and belonging, which is the one that Brene says. So that was, this is good. Nurturing the connection and sense of belonging that can only happen when we believe we are enough.
Right. And it's not, for those of you new on the path or have never started or are on the path, it doesn't really matter where you are. It's not a destination. Even that internal belonging, that sense of self-worth, it's not like I walk around with that all the time. I feel unworthy. I feel not good enough. But then I have the tools to remind myself, okay, why are you not feeling worthy?
Yeah.
Where is it showing up? So it's not like you just, I'm authentic. No, it's not that way. Oh, I'm worthy. I stay there. I'm never going to not be worthy again. No, it's not. So it's having that gentle compassion and returning. Just keep returning.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like the wave, like we talked about before. It's we're going to lose it and we're going to come back. And that's okay.
It's an opportunity to learn and grow. Every time a situation comes up where you are seeing that pattern of unworthiness, it's an opportunity to learn and grow some more and peel back another layer of the onion.
Exactly.
And it's a lifetime of doing this work, but you do get better and better and better at it. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Oh,
you feel that in your life?
And you started to notice, you observe like, oh, here it's coming up again.
Yeah.
Sometimes you notice it in the moment, sometimes you don't notice it, but you notice it quicker. I mean, and it's just like, the brain stuff. I mean, it's just our neural pathways are becoming more grooved and understanding like, oh, here it is again. Oh, okay. Notice your thought. Your thought's now created a story. Okay. It's a story. That's all it is. So what else is going on? Yeah. So it does get easier but it takes practice.
It does.
Just
and
returning.
Just returning each time. And we were talking before we started recording, we were just talking about Brene Brown, who has just started a new podcast of her own.
Which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic. So check it out. And she, in her very first episode, she talked about the FFTs, which are first frigging times.
Another word.
And another word for that, which just means that when you do something for the first time, and she explained for herself how scary it can be to put yourself out there. When you
Oh, yeah.
stretch yourself outside your comfort zone, which I've been doing a great deal lately
Yes.
with starting a podcast, and we're doing, masks off YouTube and doing this podcast plus starting a business. All of this is new, brand new for me. And I'm not going to lie, I hear the shame gremlins from time to time of,
Sure.
who are you to think you can do this?
Imposter syndrome.
The imposter syndrome. Exactly. So it does creep up, but here's what happens, as you just pointed out, Tia, is that when those shame gremlins come, in the past, they used to come and stay there. I didn't know what to do with them, but now they come, and now I have tools and I have enough practice up to this point that I can follow it up with, that's just a thought. That's an old pattern to self-sabotage.
Right.
And then I go back to, okay, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I am trying to walk the walk. I am on a path to becoming more authentic. I'm not completely, but becoming more authentic. And so when I put myself out there, that's part of the process. And then, just letting it go.
Right.
And I can come back with more positive self-talk when
Yes.
those shame gremlins come about, and they do. And Brene Brown has them too. She had them too when she started.
Right.
And she's the expert in this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not comfortable for everybody.
Yeah, it's not.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's where we lean in.
Yes. Lean in. Oh, that's another good book. What's the name of that? Do you remember that one?
Lean in. Yeah. We'll have to figure
it out and bring that for another episode.
There's so many good ones.
Yeah, I know. So many good teachers.
Wow. Well, this has been amazing as always.
Good. It is. Yes. And please, if anyone has comments, feedback, we'd love to hear. Give us a review, give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We would appreciate it.
You can see our faces.
Yes. Now you can see our faces on YouTube.
In our pajamas, basically.
Yes.
Our Corona outfits.
Coronavirus outfits. Showing up real and authentic.
That's right.
No bells and whistles.
Nope. You just get us as we are.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.